Good evening and welcome to the Daily News Roundup. I am Abigail Smythe. Among the stories in this evening's newscast, increased police presence on Law Street, downtown Kingston, following fatal shooting of a man by a member of security forces. St. Andrew gangsters recruiting students to carry out criminal activities. Ocho Rios Primary School teachers stage protest after vice principal is assaulted by a parent. Opposition leader says Jamaica is in an awful state. In business, oil prices dive to their lowest since early January. In the region, plane crash kills 8 people in Colombia. Further overseas, death toll in Indonesia soars to over 200 following earthquake. And in sports, Saudi Arabia scored one of the biggest World Cup upsets by beating Argentina. Now for the news in detail. There is now increased police presence on Laws Street, downtown Kingston, following the fatal shooting of a man allegedly by a member of the security forces.
Sometime about 4:30 p.m., a shooting occurred, which has resulted in the death of one person, a man known as TK. He's from the area. That shooting incident involved members of the JDF.
Residents angered by the shooting set fire to a police scene of crime vehicle Monday night. The fire was put out as heavily armed members of the security forces blanketed the community. Preliminary reports are that he was shot close to a security checkpoint after he allegedly engaged in a confrontation with a group of soldiers. The community has been part of a zone of special operations for several months.
What I be encouraging people to do, Indicom has been informed and they are now on location. We're encouraging citizens who may have seen what transpired to come forward and to cooperate with the Indicom investigators so that we can further this investigation.
The St. Andrew South Police have disclosed that gangsters operating in the division are recruiting students to carry out their criminal activities. Commander of the St. Andrew South Division, Senior Superintendent Kirk Ricketts, says there are more than 70 gangs operating in the division, with 40 of them being active. He says many of the gangs consist of children as young as 13 years old, some of whom have already dropped out of school. SSP Ricketts says, quote, "So them can't read and can't write, but they firing rifles that bigger than them, and their life on earth is normally very short, so we have a high level of fatalities in the space," end quote. Earlier this month, Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson disclosed that children aged 15 to 17 have been charged with 875 major crimes in the country since 2019. 27-year-old Dylan Stevens, otherwise called Six Boss, a bike taxi operator of Shantytown in Little London, Westmoreland, has been charged with illegal possession of firearm and assault at common law, stemming from a dispute he had with a teenage boy on Wednesday, August 31. Reports are that about 5 p.m., Stevens, along with another man, were involved in a dispute with the teenager on Top Road, Little London. The men allegedly left and returned armed with a rifle and fired a shot in the air while threatening the teen. They again left the area but later returned and pointed a handgun at the teen. The boy ran and a report was made to the police. The police visited the scene and found evidence of what the teen reported, a spent casing. An investigation commenced, which led to Stevens being apprehended during an operation on Thursday, November 17, and subsequently charged. His court date is being arranged and the police are pursuing his accomplice. Teachers at the Ocho Rios Primary School in St. Anne staged a protest on Monday after the vice principal of the institution was reportedly assaulted by a parent. A teacher at the school says the parent was upset after their child's phone was confiscated. He says before the student's phone was confiscated, he called his mother, and his mother came to the school and engaged in a tussle with the vice principal for the cell phone. The vice principal was reportedly hit in the head with a vase. The teacher notes that the teachers are unhappy with how the matter was handled by the police, which concluded that the parent should apologize. The teachers, however, believe an apology is not enough, and that the student at the center of the incident should be relocated or removed from the school. However, Chairman of the Ocho Rios Primary School, Michael Belnavis, has sought to downplay the severity of the incident involving the parent and the vice principal. He says that the teachers were premature in their protest action as the information they had was skewed. He says the teachers went on information that was passed on social media and let their emotions get the best of them. The school board chairman states that a meeting was held and that measures are to be implemented for the safety of the staff. He notes that they have asked the police to pass through the school in the mornings and afternoons, and they are putting more security guards on the school compound. He adds that they are also looking at conflict resolution and notes that parents will also be sensitized. In the meantime, the Jamaica Teachers Association JTA President Lasandra Harrison has condemned the assault of the vice principal of the school. Ms. Harrison says as a society there needs to be a better way of resolving conflicts other than resorting to violence. She argues that this cannot be the message that adults are communicating to children. The JTA president is urging parents to use the proper channels to resolve whatever issues may arise involving their child or children. Leader of the opposition People's National Party, PNP, Mark Golding, is arguing that the government has not been addressing all the fundamental steps that should take place to move the country in the right direction. He says the country is in an awful state. Meanwhile, opposition spokesman on national security, Senator Peter Bunting, is criticizing the Holness administration's handling of crime, suggesting that the rate of murders was fewer during the PNP's time in office. He also argues that with the current murder rate, it will surpass 1,500 before the end of the year. School administrators and nutritionists are calling for the government to not only increase its allocation to schools for feeding students on the Program of Advancement through Health and Education path, but to also expand the program to provide meals for needy students not on path. The Ministry of Education is to decide if it will need The Ministry of Education is to decide if it will need to request more funds for the school feeding aspect of the program. Principals say they are forced to find creative ways to respond to the inadequacy of funds provided under PATH, a situation which they say has been worsened by inflation and the rising cost of food. Principal of Black River High School, Christopher Romans, has revealed that 670 of the 1,570 students are on PATH. He says although only 70% of PATH students at his school take advantage of the free lunch, the $150 provided by the ministry for each student per day is insufficient, with the average lunch costing $450. As a result, he has had to prioritize distributing lunch to students preparing to sit exams. He also explains that teachers have had to be using their own funds to ensure students are getting nutritious meals. Faced with similar challenges, Principal of Spanish Town Primary in St. Catherine, Roger Curlew, is calling for a 100% increase in the funds allocated for PATH lunches. He reports that of the 1,408 students at his school, 450 depend on PATH. Chairman of the St. Thomas Municipal Corporation and Mayor of Morant Bay, Michael Hugh, has resigned from the post of mayor. His resignation took effect at 5 o'clock Monday afternoon. Mr. Hugh's resignation has paved the way for the People's National Party's Hubert Williams, councillor for the White Horses Division, to become the next mayor and chairman of the corporation. Mr. Hugh's resignation follows the death of Jamaica Labour Party councillor Lenworth Rawle in October, which has shifted the balance of control in the St. Thomas Municipal Corporation. In business, oil prices whipsawed on Monday, diving early to their lowest since early January, but then rebounding as reports varied about whether Saudi Arabia and other OPEC oil producers are considering a 500,000 barrel daily output increase. Brent crude futures for January fell 77 cents to $86.85 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures for December were down 58 cents and $79.50 ahead of the contract's expiry on Monday. In the region, a small plane crashed on Monday in a neighborhood in the central Colombian city of Medellin, killing 8 people on board. In a statement, Colombian aviation officials say the aircraft crashed after taking off from the Olaya Herrera airport. The victims were identified as 6 passengers and 2 crew members. It was not immediately clear if more than 8 people were on the plane. It is reported that the aircraft experienced an engine failure during takeoff. 7 homes were destroyed and 6 other buildings were damaged. And still in the region, Dominican authorities have ramped up border enforcement and deportations of Haitians, saying such actions are crucial to national security amid intensifying turmoil in the neighboring country due to a gang blockade of fuel supplies and a cholera outbreak. Authorities say they deported 43,900 migrants, largely Haitians, between July and October. In September and October alone, deportation figures shot up by about 50%. And on the international scene, rescuers say many of those killed and injured in a major earthquake on the Indonesian island of Java were children. The death toll now soars to 268. More than 1,000 people were wounded. In the latest announcement on Tuesday, it was reported that 151 people were still missing. Reports also say that 22,000 homes had been damaged and more than 58,000 people had taken shelter in several locations in the region. The 5.6 magnitude quake struck on a mountainous region on Monday, causing landslides that buried entire villages near the West Java town. Victims were crushed or trapped after walls and roofs caved in. And in sports news, Saudi Arabia scored one of the biggest World Cup upsets after beating Lionel Messi's Argentina 2-1 on Tuesday. A stunned Messi watched as scores of green-clad fans from Saudi Arabia, Qatar's neighbor, celebrated in disbelief in the stands. Saudi Arabia's substitutes stormed the field. Saudi Arabia are ranked 51st in the FIFA World Rankings. Argentina, who were one of the favorites to win the World Cup, would have equaled Italy's record of 37 matches unbeaten had they avoided defeat. And still on the topic of World Cup, Jamaican-born England winger Raheem Sterling scored his first goal at a World Cup on Monday during the Three Lions' 6-2 win over Iran in their opener. The Chelsea star scored his side's 3rd goal in first half stoppage time, finishing off a hurricane cross with a brilliant volley into the goal. He also registered an assist on the day in an all-around strong display by England. Sterling featured for England at the 2 previous World Cups in Brazil 2014 and Russia 2018, but failed to score on both occasions. A native of Marvelly in St Andrews, Sterling is the first Jamaican footballer to score a goal at the tournament since Theodore Tapper Whitmore at the 1998 World Cup in France. And that's it for your news roundup for today. I am Abigail Smythe. See you next time.